Welcome to Agent Provocateur. Marc-André Fleury joining us in a second. Allan, one of your favorite people, I think, in hockey, right? Like just the guy that, I mean, when I talk to you personally, he's the guy that you talk about so much with such glowing terms.
Yeah, and he's someone that I've represented since he was 15 years of age. He's 37 right now. So really, we all kind of grew up together with his family, my family. I remember my kids at his home in Montreal in the summer, swimming in the pool with him. And Mark would come up under my kids and throw them, catapult them through the air. And we have photos of our kids, 5-6 feet in the air being thrown across the pool going, 10, 15, 20 feet. They were little at the time. So yeah, you reflect certain points in your life about how you started, when you started, and Mark and I have always been bonded together in that way.
So we're going to tell some stories. There's some amazing stuff coming up, including his very first contract, getting cut early on in his career, like before he even made the NHL. This is a great story because Marc-André Fleury, if there's anything he's known for, it's bouncing back in a big way. Because that same year he got cut, he gets drafted to the Quebec Major Junior League. But before we get to all that, Allan, the news this week is that Montreal's finally hired their general manager. And I think, where a lot of people reached out to us was that their general manager is an agent. You're an agent. And, I think a lot of people have questions about, A, did you have any interest in being one? 2, what do you think the strengths are that an agent would bring that would be unique to that position?
Well, there have been a number of agents who've gone on to become general managers. So just thinking back in time, Pierre Lacroix was longtime agent in Quebec, represented Mike Bossy, represented Patrick Roy, was maybe one of the best general managers of his era with the Colorado Avalanche. Dean Lombardi was an agent, started off as an agent. Ray Shero started off as an agent, working in the agent business, representing players. Mike Gillis was a longtime agent before he became the GM in Vancouver. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a few other people as well. So there are a number of qualities that you acquire in the agent business that do directly translate into being a general manager. You are a talent evaluator. You obviously are experienced at negotiating contracts. What's lacking is the experience of managing a team, managing a scouting department, and being able to prepare and execute on very important days like trade deadline and free agency. Imagine on the agent side going into free agency where you're focused on your few clients who are about to become free agents, and now being a general manager and having holes to fill and having lists of players available that you've ranked in priority of signing out in the open market, being able to jump into that market and navigate to the guys that you want. It's a totally different skill set. If you're asking me if I've ever once thought about being a GM or had any interest in being a GM, the answer is absolutely not. Okay. I respect people very much who want to work for a club. I understand what it means to chase the Stanley Cup and growing up loving hockey, what that entails. But for me, I just could never trade a player. I could never put a player on waivers. I could never tell a player that after several years playing in a city that we're not going to sign him anymore. I have to have my heart behind what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't have that drive and passion to work on that side. I've always been a player's guy. I've always fought for players' rights. I've always enjoyed and have great passion in taking care of my clients and being there for them and working with them as a advisor off the ice, and the one-on-one relationship that develops not just with the player, but with the player's entire family. They're meaningful relationships that I can never see having if I were sitting on the other side of the table. I just couldn't. I respect it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look down on it all in any way. I understand it. But for me personally, it's not something that I would ever, my dad always said, never say never. And I agree with him in every respect, except there's one area where I can say never.
Okay. Now you've dealt with, before we get to Marc-Andre, one last question. You've dealt with every general manager for the last 25 years in the NHL.
Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of people, and you've dealt with the good ones and the not so successful ones. My question to you is, for the good ones, for anybody that wants to be a great general manager, if they're a general manager listening right now, or they're a future general manager and that's what they want to be, what qualities in the most successful ones do you often see? Is there a shared, these three things are the things I always see? Or can you tell when somebody's going to be a great general manager? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. There's certain people that are indecisive and they have great difficulty making decisions, and they agonize over their decisions. And sometimes you see a phenomenon of over-analysis leading to paralysis, where people are just constantly overanalyzing, taking in too much data to the point where it's impossible to reach a conclusion. And I think the number one quality, or at least a very important quality to have for a general manager today, is to be able to sift through the data and sift through the issues, weigh the pros and cons of different actions, and being able to bring it to a head and make a decision. And there's a lot of people today that just have great difficulty doing that. And I think another very important quality that I recognize in general managers is someone who truly does care and is concerned about the well-being of the players. There are some GMs, and over the last 25 plus years in the business, there have been some that just don't care. There is a switch there where there is zero conscience. They don't care about the player's well-being, the player's family's well-being, and approach the business in a mercenary way. Now, there are many general managers who are truly good people, who act with the best of intentions, and you recognize that they have a job to do. I have a job to do as an agent. And like I've said many times, 95% of the time, all of our interests align. The player, the agent, the club, the GM, everybody's aligned. And there are times, probably about 5% of the time, when you're just not on the same page and your interests do not align. And when that does happen, it can be confrontational. It can get ugly, but it's business. It's not personal. And when the issues get resolved, and every issue ultimately does get resolved one way or the other, you move on and you continue doing business with that person. And there's many people I do business with on a daily basis that I don't like, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I approach it the same way. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to further my client's interests and take care of them. And if certain people in the media or fans don't like it, well, you know what? I don't work for you. I work for the player. And that's the only thing I care about. And that's basically what my mission has been since I started in the business.
Wow. Well, I think the relationships you talk about are we've seen this with David Perron, we've seen this with Mike Rupp. I mean, heck, we had a general manager on a couple, last episode. Right. Doug Armstrong. I think, Allan, what we're going to see today with Marc-Andre Fleury is the relationship you talk about, and I can see why being a GM would not be for you. I can understand that because there's a connection the two of you clearly have that's really special, and I'm really excited for the audience to get to see.
Our guest this week is the pride of Sorel, Quebec, the number 1 overall pick in the 2003 NHL draft. I was sitting beside him at the time, an Olympic gold medalist. He's made 5 trips to the Stanley Cup finals and is a 3-time Stanley Cup winner. He's a 4-time NHL All-Star, the reigning co-winner of the Jennings Trophy, and reigning Vezina Trophy winner, the 3rd winningest goalie in NHL history, a legendary prankster, affectionately known to everyone as Flower. A client of mine since the age of 15. It's an honor to welcome to the podcast, Marc-Andre Fleury.
Jeez, thank you, Allan. I feel pretty old, saying all these things. Thanks.
That's quite the resume. That's pretty amazing.
That's good.
So, Flower, when you were 15 years old and the first time we met, did you ever think when you were 37 years old, you'd be coming on our podcast as a guest?
Not a chance. I didn't think I would be holding a cell phone and talking to you, making a radio show on this or a podcast, but definitely not. At that point, I just, I always dreamt of the NHL, but I never really actually thought I was going to make it, let alone play for 18 years, So this is a big surprise to me. And but it's been a lot of fun for sure.
Since we started the podcast, the one question I keep getting every week from people is, when is Marc-Andre Fleury coming on? I have people saying, hey, you had some great stories this week, and this guest was really interesting, but when's Flower coming on? So this has been a couple of weeks in the making, but it's great to have you on and great to be able to share some stories with people out there, because you and I over the years have picked up a few.
Yeah, definitely a few. But thanks for having me. I watch some of your shows. You guys have been doing a good job. It's always interesting, to find out more about guys and stuff. So, good job out there.
Thank you. Thank you. So one of the things that has been a staple of your career is how over the years you've overcome adversity. And maybe one of the first times you've had to overcome adversity was being cut by your midget AAA team. You want to tell everybody about that?
I was a little bit surprised, but I made that team, right? Midget AAA with Charles Lemoine. But then I think a little bit before mid-season, Olivier Michaud came back from the junior, and then took my spot, and they sent me back down to Bentham, and finished the season there. So that was a little bit of a reality check. That it's never going to be a smooth ride everywhere I go. But
how old were you?
It's good. I think at the time I started 14, so I was 15 when I went back to Bentham.
And how do you deal with disappointment like that at that age?
Yeah, it was big, right? I think I remember that night I went for a long run, trying to relax a bit, because I was pretty mad, and I was staying with the Billet family also that time, and they were great to me, great to my family. Still in touch nowadays. So it was definitely hard, but I went on back to Bentham and just tried to play good, tried my best, right? Tried to work at it, and had a good, the season finished pretty good for me there, and then I got drafted to the Q.
So you went from Bantam AA directly into Quebec Major Junior League with Cape Breton.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite the jump from Bantam directly into junior. Not many goalies have been able to do that. If you want to call out the coaches in Midget AAA who sent you back, now's your chance.
Yeah, what are they up to now?
I don't know. I run into him though, like a few years later. I was I think with Pittsburgh, and maybe it was an exhibition game or something, and he was on the press box and I wasn't playing, so I got to shake his hand. I gave him a good shake and look at him in the eye. That was good.
Did you give it like a little bit of an extra squeeze?
An extra squeeze, a little bit, yeah.
Now, was it a surprise when you got drafted? And I guess the other question is, and Allan, maybe you're getting to this. I want to know when the two of you met. So, Marc-Andre, was it a surprise to get drafted the same year you got cut?
It was, and that year prior to that, I was playing Bentham the Bowlby. Right, so that wasn't great either, But yeah, so it was, it was pretty surprising. I tell you the truth, I didn't follow the Q too much back then. I just, I knew about it obviously, but I didn't look too much into it. And then when I got drafted in Cape Breton, I didn't even know what it was, So I had to look it up a bit, but yeah, it was a big surprise.
Yeah. So you and I were together at the Q draft when you got drafted. But we had met before the draft. The previous summer, we were outside a hockey rink, and we were sitting outside on a curb together. And that was the first time that we met. And then you got drafted into the Q. And the next summer, you and I and a bunch of other people ended up going over to Slovakia together for a summer training camp with Rolly Melanson, who was at the time the Montreal Canadiens goalie coach.
Yeah. Geez, you have a good memory. Thank God you're here. I forget everything.
Allan, how did you find out about Marc-Andre? Like, how did this happen? How did you guys even end up on that curb together?
There is this amazing, amazing gentleman who's worked with me literally since I got into the business of representing players by the name of Norm Conway. And Norm Conway has been involved in hockey for over 40 years. He's been involved in the Q for that long. When I met him, he was a scout with Victoriaville, one of the teams in the Q. And I met him at a hockey game, a midget AAA game at the Verdun Auditorium. And after meeting him and talking to him for about a half an hour, I walked away from the meeting and I said, this gentleman needs to be working with me. He was incredible. And I was able to steal him away from Victoriaville. It's the best theft that I've ever accomplished in my life. Norm is still working with me and our agency to this day, and is in his 70s, and just really a remarkable person with an incredible scouting eye. And I vividly recall him telling me, he goes, Allan, there's a goalie out on the ice right now here that you have to meet when he comes off the ice. And it was at one of our summer skates for young prospects, because his name is Marc-André Fleury, and he's going to be a great, great goalie. And at the time, you were playing Bantam AA. You had just finished that season. right? So Norm, as he likes to remind me every once in a while on our third beer together, predicted all of this for you back when you were playing Bantam. That's how good he is. Yeah.
He was
That's
great.
how we met.
He was like the first guy who approached me, and he was always, like you said, very knowledgeable and a great guy. And he still comes to the games once in a while. I get to see him in Montreal after games a little bit. And also he's, I don't know, he's definitely a great hockey guy.
Yeah, and you've always stayed in touch with him over the years. You invited him to your Stanley Cup parties and by your home when you had your little celebration day with the cup.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I owe him a lot, like to have helped me, I guess, get recognized. Even though I was playing Bantam, and get on board with you guys, and then you guys helped me out throughout till nowadays.
Let me ask you this, Allan. Your first impression of Marc-Andre when he was that young, like what when you're sitting on that curb, what do you come away with from that conversation?
I actually remember vividly the conversation as we sat on the curb. It was something that I always remembered, and my impression coming away from sitting and talking for about 20 minutes back and forth was how focused Mark was and serious he was about goaltending. He could smile and laugh and be self-deprecating and incredibly self-aware for a 15-year-old, yet at the same time can see, even then, that competitiveness and the fire that was burning inside him to keep going. We talked a little bit about his goaltending heroes in that first conversation. And I remember sharing with Mark that I grew up idolizing Ken Dryden, another guy who wore number 29. And my entire bedroom was Ken Dryden, head to toe, posters, everything with pictures all on the walls. And Mark was talking to me about, Marty Brodeur and Patrick Roy and Felix Potvin. And those were guys that Mark was looking at back then. So
Mark, you meet Allan. What's your first impression of Allan Walsh? You remember?
I don't know. It's a while ago. I think too many bucks to the head. I think I think at first that was like this guy's from Montreal and his French sucks. I remember that because my English wasn't good at all, right? Obviously, it was barely in English, and then so we a little bit battled to get across each other, but it was still good enough, right? Obviously, to
That's awesome.
to communicate, and so it was good.
Amazing. So you get drafted, and Allan, you were there for it. Obviously, was it a surprise actually that he got drafted, or were you guys expecting it? And then he's off to Cape Breton, which is a completely different area. And by the way, they only speak English in Cape Breton. So I guess, Marc-Andre, you kind of had to adapt quickly.
Yeah, I had a few headaches at night during camp in that first season, but that definitely helped me a lot. Even though I still have a big French accent, I've learned a lot over there for sure.
Yeah, there's one story from Cape Breton that I always remembered and always got a chuckle from. There was a game in Cape Breton when Mark got pulled, and the head coach Pascal Vincent had the goalie on the bench mapping shots, where they came from, and the amount of shots on goal while he was watching the game. So Mark got pulled, and I assume he was not too happy with the situation. And he's sitting on the edge of the bench, and they gave him the piece of paper and the pen to map the shots. And when the head coach got the paper back at the end of the game, it was blank. And when you turned the paper over, Mark had written, "I am not a statistician. I'm a goalie."
In French or English?
In English.
Impressive. Statistician is not an easy word to spell.
No, but I asked her trainer who was standing beside me how to spell to make sure it wasn't any mistakes.
Amazing.
So he was getting a good laugh out of that. Oh, jeez.
Wow.
I don't know if I would. Yeah, I've talked to Pascal about this, later on, a few years back, but he had a good kick out of it. But
Yeah. Well, at the time, I got a phone call from Pascal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you what Mark did.
But I don't know, you play, and then to me, game pole is very embarrassing, right? It's it's the worst. I hate the feeling, and that means I suck too, right? So I was mad and frustrating, and then you sit there and then they give you the paper right away to take shots. I'm like, I don't know. It was yeah.
So let's talk about going number 1 overall in the NHL draft. What do you remember about that 4 or 5 days in Nashville where the draft was held?
Yeah, it was a good time. It was obviously been around. I think it was such a good draft, right? Like nowadays, guys are still playing and played for many years, and we got to hang out a bit. During the team's interview, I thought it was always stressful, and I was, pretty shy kid, so it was tough to sit there in front of all the, the front office from a bunch of teams, right? But it was good to do it. Good experience, and I had a lot of family too that drove down, flew down, aunts, uncles, cousin, obviously mom, dad, sister, my wife now, Allan, David. I don't know. It was my junior billet was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should have said they've been, still in touch, and they're amazing people, right? And I was glad that they could be there and see it. So it was a bit of crazy few days, but definitely good memories.
Yeah. So there was a trade that went down the morning of the draft.
Okay.
Between Florida and Pittsburgh, where Florida acquired the number 1 overall pick, and I got a call that said Mark is going number 1. And I remember we were in the lobby of the hotel. It was 95 degrees in Nashville that day with incredible humidity. And the hotel was about 7-8 blocks from the rink. And I said to Mark, Mark, do you want to know what's going on, or do you want to be surprised? And Mark said, I want to be surprised. I want to be surprised. And then he goes, oh, no, tell me. So I said, there was a trade. It's Pittsburgh, and you're going to go number 1. And I remember the look in your eyes, because you really hadn't thought that week that you were going 1, because Florida didn't need a goalie. And when the trade happened, and I had a feeling when that trade happened, they were trading to get Mark, and then it was confirmed. And then it was like, I'm getting calls from NHL Network, TSN, everyone's calling like, where's Mark? We want to interview him. French TV is calling, and we're still in the lobby of the hotel. And we're like, let's just walk, which was a terrible mistake. Because as we're walking together from the hotel to the rink, within a block, we're both soaking wet. Right.
Yeah.
And now, and it was surprising for Nashville, but people are stopping you on the street, wanting your autograph, and they have, cameras, and they're taking pictures. And I got one arm around your waist, and I'm like, let's go. Everyone's waiting. And I just imagine, the draft starts. Number 1, Marc-Andre Fleury. There's an empty seat. I'm like, we got to get to the building. And, we got there, we toweled off and got to our seats. And there were a bunch of interviews, and then the draft started, and you weren't sitting very long. What went through your mind when you heard your name called for the first time as the number 1 overall pick?
Even though you told me, I still I don't know. I still didn't really believe it. I was like, we'll see. We'll see when we get there, But I still had my doubts. But I don't know. It was pretty surreal, just to to be sitting there with the family and friends. I expected it, but I didn't expect it. It was still, I don't know, a little crazy that it happened. And I remember you told me, make sure you take your time. It's your time. Make sure you say thanks and to your family and stuff. And I did, and I really appreciate that. And then to walk to the stage and put the jersey on, for the picture, that was, I don't know, everything went by so fast. It feels like, it's almost you black out through all this, right? Until later on when you can sit back at the hotel and really soak it in a bit.
And soak it in we did. I'll tell you 2 things that I remember from that day. It was around so after you got drafted, Pittsburgh had a suite in the arena, and they invited you and your entire party, everybody, to come with you up into the suite to watch the rest of the draft from the suite, the luxury box. So it's around 3rd round, because back in those days, you did the entire draft in one day. It wasn't first round and then go and do, the 2nd to the 7th round. There were 9 rounds back then, and you did the entire draft from beginning to end. It was a long day. And it's around the 3rd round, and I'm getting a call on my phone. And it was a 412 area code, but I didn't recognize it. And I went, hello, Allan? Yes. Allan, I'm the team media person for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We have a serious situation here. And I'm like, what's the matter? They're like, the entire Fleury party is in the luxury box, and we've run out of beer. I don't think they were expecting like 17 people to go up into the box. The box was full. They couldn't get another person in there. So I'm sitting in the 2nd row, next to clients here. I suggest you very quickly go get some more beer. And they were like, oh, okay, thanks.
Amazing.
Yeah. So and one more. And then I remember we all went back to the hotel, and I had another client, Milan Michalek, who has also an amazing family. And the Fleury extended family clan and the Michaleks, Czech people who spoke no English, and then a family that spoke primarily French. They had bonded over that, 4 or 5 days together. And here Mark went 1 and Milan went 6th overall to San Jose. And we got back to the hotel, and they were kind of closing up the bar. And I went over to the guy and said, listen, we'll give you an extremely generous tip. There's a lot of people here who are really happy and would like to celebrate. Would you stay late and keep this place open? He's like, sure. He was like a real like Southerner. And he was drinking with us. The bartender was like partying with us. Anyways, we went till about 4:30 in the morning with the Michalek family and the Fleury family. We were singing songs. They were singing in Czech. We were singing in French. My French was fantastic that night after the beer. I was speaking pure land. It was awesome. And I remember that night as a really special night, especially how everybody kind of came together. And there were a lot of shots done that night from the private Slivovica that was brought all the way from Czech Republic for the occasion.
I remember, right? Milan's dad always had that drink, right? That he brought from home, and then it was just like pouring everybody some shots along the way. So
what is that?
Good times, right? Yeah. So I forgot.
It's homemade. It's called Slivovica.
Okay.
And it's homemade plum brandy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What is it good?
And if
Strong.
you don't have hair on your chest, it will grow it after one or two shots.
Oh, jeez.
Amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. So, I mean, listen, you guys have got to be over the moon at that point. You know, obviously you're partying till 4 a.m. But, you know, Allan, I think you recognize this of being an agent as long as you have been, and Marc-Andre haven't been through it. There is a certain degree of pressure that comes with being a first overall pick, right? That nobody else probably, unless you're a first overall pick, can relate to. Pittsburgh was in a tough way at that time. The franchise had been sold and unsold, and there was a lot of talk about moving it. And you were sort of, Marc-Andre, at the beginning of that. How do you keep your head? And Allan, what do you say to your client who's just been drafted first overall after, you know, the party night wears off? Okay, is there anything that you have to sit down with Marc-Andre Fleury and say? And Marc-Andre Fleury, you know, are you worried about it? Are you nervous? I'm curious about that.
I think for me, not right away. I think it was summer went on, like usual, going to workouts and training and all that. And then camp comes around, and obviously to me it was nice, you know, to be drafted first, but didn't mean I was going to play in the NHL, you know. So my goal was always to have a start to play in the NHL one day, and I knew I started to work and put in the work to show that I could do it, right? And so at that point, I feel like I didn't really think too much about where I got drafted, but maybe once the season started and the fact that we were losing, you know, almost every night, at some point started to weigh on me. And then I always read the paper since I'm growing up and stuff, right? So that's something I've learned quickly. Stop reading, you know, what media write, what people write about you, and just try to go about your day and in your work and stuff. But there was definitely not winning and, you know, giving up a lot of goals. Obviously, was sometimes made me doubt, you know, about my capabilities and what I could do, and if I deserve to be a number one, you know. So definitely, I think there's some pressure that comes with it, and just gotta find a way to put it aside and just worry about putting the work, like I said, and try to have some fun.
Now let's talk about one of the great untold stories from Marc-Andre Fleury's career. And it's the story around the signing of your first NHL contract. Because if you want to talk about an entry into experiencing the business side of the game, here we go. So Mark heads to Pittsburgh for training camp, and it was extremely odd that Pittsburgh, after drafting Mark 1 overall, didn't sign him to a contract. Even back then, the number 1 overall pick signed his first NHL contract within a week or two of the NHL draft. And I remember calling Pittsburgh's GM at the time, Craig Patrick, and he said, we have such severe financial issues here. We're really going to wait until training camp and see if Mark makes the team. And if he doesn't make the team because he's 18 years of age, he has to go back to Cape Breton. So we're just going to wait and see. And I was like, really? you don't want to sign him now. Now, the important nuance that needs to be understood here, Mark has a late birthday that's actually in November. After September 15, if you're not signed to an NHL contract back then, after 2 years, you don't go back into the draft. You become an unrestricted free agent. So Mark had the ability, if he didn't sign with Pittsburgh, to become an unrestricted free agent at 20 years of age.
Wow.
After being the number 1 overall pick at 18, right? So Mark goes into camp, and he's staying in the team hotel, which is across the street from the practice rink. And he has a great camp. And we're coming up to the deadline. And the deadline at the time was September 30th, where Mark has to be signed to an NHL deal to stay in Pittsburgh, or they are obligated, no discretion, no choice, obligated to return him to junior. Okay. And I called the hotel on September 28th, which was the last official day of camp. And everybody was then moving back to the big rink. Mm-hmm. And all of the player movements from the hotel, all the players were either sent to the American League, moved to another hotel by the rink, a few guys, or sent back to junior. And Mark had checked out of the hotel. And I had no idea where he was. So, Mark, where did you go?
I went to stay with Mario for a little while.
Mario Lemieux.
Lemieux, yeah. That's one thing I gotta say, though. Yeah, that was pretty.
The owner of the team.
Yeah, that was
okay. Different. How did that happen?
Actually, like during camp, Mario and Marc Bergevin, Ramsey Abid, they're always good to me. They always take me out for lunch and checking on me, make sure I was doing okay and everything was fine. So at some point at the end of camp there, he asked me if I wanted to go stay with him and his family. So obviously that was a huge honor for me. I couldn't decline that.
No. And I remember you had dinner the first night there, and there was a conversation about your contract. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
This sounds suspicious, gentlemen.
It went something like, first of all, you've had a great camp, and general manager is going to call Allan, and we're going to work on getting you signed. Congratulations, you're going to be here in Pittsburgh. But Mark, it's very important that you tell your agent to, be very favorable with the first offer we give, because we don't have a lot of money here. We have severe financial issues, and we're going to, you're going to make a lot of money in your career down the road. It would be really good if you talk to your agent about, giving us a bit of a break here. Was that about what was said?
Yeah, I think they could be right. It sounds like it. But I don't know. I feel bad because Mario and his whole family, they were so welcoming. They were so great to me, right? So I know he was trying to do the best for his team and stuff. But I would never hold this against him at all. Never. Right? It was, like I said, it was honestly so nice to me and my family.
How did your agent react to that, Marc-Andre?
What? You're at Mario's place.
And he said, what about the contract?
Yeah, exactly. So I gotta get a deal first. Oh, jeez.
So, yeah. Allan, what do you do? What do you do there?
Well, I had a feeling that something was coming. Mm-hmm. And, the players that had gone number 1 overall back in that era. There was Rick DiPietro, who went number one. There was Ilya Kovalchuk that went number one. There was Rick Nash, who went one, and Kari Lehtinen, goalie, went number two. And then the following year was Mark number one. And if you look at all those contracts are fairly similar to each other in structure. And back then, there was, if memory serves me right, a signing bonus of $1,200,000 total, which has now been reduced to $92,500 a year under the existing CBA. But most significantly, and where most of the negotiation took place, was over the performance bonus package, where all of the players together in that grouping of number one overall could get, if they played at an extremely high level and hit the triggers for those bonuses, up to $11 million over the life of the deal.
Wow.
So it was a significant contract, but it was a show me contract, because unless you hit these very high levers, you weren't going to collect on it. But on paper, it was possible. And I get a fax from Pittsburgh with an offer that was worth about half of what all the other players had signed for in this era. And if Mark had signed this contract, he would be setting back the number one overall pick from all these years that have all incrementally increased the size of the bonus package, and it would be decimated. And it would be significant. And the guys who came, next, the following year and the following year, would receive as the new Fleury precedent, a much lower contract. And imagine being in the position of an agent needing to explain this to a 18-year-old hockey player who just wants to play in the NHL and is being shown an offer worth a total of about $6 million, even though much of it was performance-based. We're still talking about huge numbers.
And Mario Lemieux just said, "Come live at my house." So, that factors in, right? Like that's a big deal for not just any hockey player, but somebody from Quebec as well. Like that's crazy. So Mark, when Allan explains this to you, how do you even take that information? How do you soak that in?
Like you said, it was hard to understand. I was like, I don't care. I'll just go play. It's good with me. Like you said, I'm staying with Mario, who was obviously a legend and one of the best hockey players ever. And he's very nice. His family is very nice. His kids, his wife, so like money wasn't really a thing, right? I was just wanted to go play hockey. So it was a little bit hard to sometimes understand, the business side of it and what was happening. And like Allan talked about the next years after, what other players would have to go through, and I remember, was it Bob Goodnow, Allan, like the head of the NHLPA back then, called Allan and said that good job for holding on, because that would screw up the next, not generation, but the next few draft picks, right?
But it got dramatic, right, Allan? It got a little bit tough.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was my partner in the business back then, and my mentor in the business was David Shadia, and I was already in Montreal. David got on a plane and flew to Pittsburgh and met with Mark. And he sat down with Mark and went over with a copy of the proposal and copies of all the other contracts of DiPietro and Kovalchuk and Nash, and explained, where the differences were, and they were huge differences. And the decision was made by all of us that Mark would leave Pittsburgh on the 28th of September, come to Montreal, and we would all be together. And either the contract gets done September 30th at, I believe, 5 p.m. was the deadline to register the contract with the NHL. And Mark will get back on a plane and fly back to Pittsburgh, or he's going to get on a plane and fly to Cape Breton. But if he gets on a plane and flies to Cape Breton, he really is only one more year after that away from unrestricted free agency. So there's a lot of leverage there. And I remember David telling me, he goes, I'm sitting in the back of the taxi, and we're right in front of Mario's house because Mark said, I got all my stuff in Mario's house. I got to get my suitcase, my clothes. I can't leave it all there. And I think Mario was golfing, and the house was empty. So Mark goes in, and David's in the back of the taxi, and the taxi driver says, is that really Mario's house? And David was terrified that Mario was going to pull up while Flowers taking everything down the stairs, coming out. And David's like, just keep the engine running and keep the car pointed in that direction. And if you see Mario Lemieux drive up, you're taking off.
Wow.
And David described it to me. He's like, Mark coming with, all the suitcases and clothes are everywhere, like carrying it all down and stuff it all in the back of the taxi, and end up getting to the Pittsburgh airport and flying back to Montreal. And I'm sitting in our offices in Montreal, and in walk, Mark and David, very, very disheveled. Everybody's kind of disheveled. It's the 28th afternoon of the 28th of September. And then Mark's whole family came and joined us. And we basically had a vigil going on inside our offices for 48 hours while we started a dialogue and continued negotiating with Pittsburgh up until the deadline. We were looking out the window of the offices, and there was a RDS truck, a news truck positioned in front of the office, so we had to go out the back door to avoid, being on camera or talking to anybody. There were, it was a really intense 48 hours. And on the morning of the 30th, Craig Patrick called, and he said, we've had a lot of discussions internally, and we're going to send you our best final offer, and either you guys take it or you don't. He says, but I think you'll find it's in line with what you've been asking for and what the other players have received. So we get off the phone, and the mood lightened a little, but now we're watching the clock. And it was around not till 3:30 that the fax machine starts ringing and pages start spitting out. And it was a fax machine that spit out one page at a time, and then waited 2 minutes to spit out the next page. All right. And it's spitting out one at a time. And we're talking about 30 pages coming, and it was coming out so slow. So Mark and I set up in the conference room, and Mark's dad was grabbing each page as it came out of the fax machine. And then Mark and I and David were reading the page and going through everything page by page. And Mark's dad would be bringing the next page, and we put it there on the table, and we're doing, literally 30 pages, going through it one by one by one by one. We finally had everything together. It was around 4:30, and we faxed it back. I think Pittsburgh received it in the full copy of the contract about 10 minutes before 5, and the contract got registered 4 minutes before the 5 p.m. deadline. We made it in 4 minutes.
Otherwise, it would have been Cape Breton for you, Marc-Andre.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, is this all worth the risk? It's so stressful, right? Yeah.
And
it was something.
What do you remember about that day?
Obviously the stress in David's eyes too when he came over to get me. I feel like too. I felt bad leaving Mario's place. Like I've said, he was so welcoming, so nice to me and his family too, right? So it was hard for me to just pack up and leave, without talking to him or because he wasn't there, right? So I thought that was one of the hardest thing I've done, and I felt bad. Like for so long, I couldn't. Even when I came back, I still it didn't feel good with me, right? But looking back, though, it was probably the right thing to do, and I was lucky to have Allan and David looking over me, right, to make sure I was taking care like I should, and that's why I hired them, right? And it was very stressful to the last minute, but I'm so happy though that when you sign that first contract and that you're finally part of the team.
Do you remember your first conversation with Mario after all that transpired?
I kind of stayed away.
I don't blame you.
Oh, jeez. Well, I remember I said sorry for leaving such in a rush, without saying nothing. But he was good about it. He was always, was very always calm person. So that's good.
And over the years, you and Mario have had an incredibly close relationship.
Yeah, it's good. He still came to the room, a bunch during my time in Pittsburgh, and obviously we won some trophies too, So he's like I said, such a gentleman, a great guy, and my own dad is still part of the team.
Well,
and
he probably respects. Sorry,
Adam, I remember talking to Mark about one thing in particular, and many people recall this. When Mario was drafted number 1 overall by the Pittsburgh Penguins, his agent had said to Pittsburgh announced before the draft, we are keeping the pick and we're drafting Mario Lemieux. It's over. There's no speculation here. We're taking him. So the agent contacted Pittsburgh and said, since you've already said you're drafting him, let's work on the contract now. And let's have the contract done when he's drafted. And there were extensive negotiations going back and forth, and they were miles apart. And Mario and his agent decided that when he was drafted by Pittsburgh, he was not going to the stage. He was not putting a jersey on. He was not putting a cap on. He was not shaking hands with anybody. He would be staying in his seat. And there is video from the draft, the Montreal Forum. I was actually in the building. I was actually there. I attended that draft. And the Pittsburgh Penguins draft from Laval Voisin, Mario Lemieux. And Mario stood up and he turned to the crowd and he waved to everybody and he sat back down.
Ooh.
Right.
Ooh.
And the contract got done very soon after the draft. It was very much to Mario's liking. So my whole feeling always was this, and it's what I tell players, and it's the way it is. It's a business, right? And being drafted number 1 overall is big business. And I think Mario, from the very beginning, respected Mark for taking that stand. And we were very clear. We don't want $1 more than what all those other guys got. But it's not fair to ask Mark to take $1 less. And that really was a principle that Mario fought for himself when he went number 1 overall.
Right.
So I think that when, it's sort of when, you're in the heat of battle in a game and the game is over and you see guys who were literally trying to take each other's heads off, standing in the corner after the game in their suits, laughing and talking with each other and giving each other little taps on the shoulders as they pass each other. It very much had that feel to it where I think Mario really respected Mark. There was never any hard feelings. It was a 48-hour period. It was over and done with. And really, to this day, nobody remembers what happened. And this story is probably going to be a revelation to many people who are going to say, I didn't know that happened, because it passed incredibly fast. But at the time, it was a very important principle that Mark understood. And at the end of the day, we work for him, right? Mm-hmm. We work for him. And if he had said, you know what, I am going to take this contract, even though it's 50% of what all the other guys got, that's the way it would be. But Mark understood the importance of holding the line for the next guy. And it wasn't so much thinking about himself, because again, I don't think that was the concern. But I think that what really resonated with Mark was holding the line for the next guy who's not, even drafted yet, who's going to be drafted number 1 overall, holding the line for that guy.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's why Bob Goodenow would have put in that phone call. And it's funny, listening to that, I was going to say, Allan, it seems like Mario is the type of guy who would respect a tough negotiator. So anyway, it's fascinating to hear a story like that. And I'm just trying to imagine myself being 18 years old and having to deal with choices like you had to deal with. With a guy who I had Mario's posters on my wall. Yeah. That is intense stuff. But you also chose to be a goalie at the NHL level. So ice in your veins is probably something that you're good at.
Oh, jeez. I would definitely rather play hockey and play with my mask on than having to deal with all the business side of it, for sure. No.
So let's put the business side away for a moment, and let's talk about some of the fun that you like to have in the room and around the guys and when playing the game. And I've assembled some of my favorite moments over the course of your career. Do you have any moments that stick out in your mind?
I just playing on the ice, like stupid stuff sometimes. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah,
or in the room, or with the guys, or after the games.
You got a bit of a reputation.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like I've slowed down though. Maybe it's age catching up. I haven't been as sharp, or as I haven't done as much maybe. But one thing I like is always if I can sneak in somebody's room. I think that's my. I like that one, because then there's so many options, right? And they don't know what's going to hit them. So that's always good.
So why don't you tell people what you do with the toilet?
Oh, jeez. Yeah. So like when we arrive at the hotel, usually there's a table with all our names on envelopes with the keys in it. So most times there's 2 keys. Mm-hmm. So if I would hurry up first off the bus and grab somebody else's key and then go to the room. Yeah, probably take 2 keys. But then, all right. So once you're there, you can panic, relax. I think I like the toilet. So if you go, you take off like the cap from the tank, right? Yeah. And then there's like a little tube that when you flush the toilet, the water comes back in the tank. And then when it's full enough, then it stops. But if you can't, usually it's a rubber tube. So you pull it out of there. And then you put it like on the ledge of the toilet like this. And you put the top of it. The cap on it, right? So you barely see the tube. So next time the guy goes to the restroom and then he flushes it, then the water just keeps like coming out at him, and it doesn't stop. Yeah. So I kind of like that.
I've never heard of that. It's a good one.
Yeah, it works usually.
No.
Yeah, there's about a 30-second stream of water coming at you like a fire hose.
Kind of tough if you're faced the other way too.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
I think you call downstairs for a wake-up call at 3 a.m. Put the heat on. The short sheet. It's like you move the sheets on the bed, so then it's folded in half. So when you lay into it, your feet don't go all the way to the bottom. You're like, stuff to explain. So it's like you're pulling on it, but your feet's holding it, and then you're just stuck. Anyway, all right, that's tough to say.
Yeah. One of my favorite was a couple of guys had just been called up from the minors with Pittsburgh, and the team is on the road. And they went out for dinner with a couple of vets. And while they were out for dinner, Mark and a few players had a key, went into their room, and moved the entire room out of the hotel room to outside the elevator. Bed, the box spring, the night tables, the lamps. The only thing left in the actual hotel room were 4 walls and some wires hanging on the wall. It was an empty box. And the elevator door opens, and these 2 rookies come out of the elevator, and they look and they see an entire hotel room just outside the elevator in the corridor. And one of the players is going, "Please let it not be 1382. Please let it not be 1382. Please let it not be 1382. And he looks at the phone and he goes, "Shit, 1382. And then it took him about 2 hours to pick up the entire room and put it back together again. Right. And these guys were asked afterwards, what they were going to do about it. And they said, it was a great line. They said, "We're going to make inquiries. We're going to investigate. And we are going to find out who did this to us. And then we're going to do absolutely nothing about it."
Oh, jeez. Yeah. I didn't have to go there. Good teammates helped me out with that one. That's good. I think one of my favorite too, is just a little random one, was in 2009 before Game 7 in Detroit. I forgot which hotel I was staying at, but all afternoon I'm trying to... MGM, right? MGM. Yeah, trying to take my nap right in the afternoon, and there was obviously a bunch of hockey people going to the game that day, and then they're just partying in the room, next door, a couple doors down, so they were pretty loud, so I couldn't sleep good. Always, a little bit nervous already and stuff, so I couldn't sleep. So when I got up, I got dressed, put my suit on, took my luggage, and I put my garbage can. I filled it up with water and put it on their door. And then I knock, and then I just ran away. So then they opened the door, and then the garbage water fell in the room. And then I could hear them, "Oh, geez, we got this. I was just laughing. It's like sometimes just little things, makes me laugh, or by myself. I got them. Yeah. One of my
favorite was in Vegas. Vegas is down by a goal, and Mark took the paddle of the stick down and basically built a snow wall in the last minute and a half of the game, just before he was getting pulled for an extra attacker. So Mark builds this snow wall across the crease, and very painstaking about it, gets it all built up. And then goes to the bench, and you see somebody on the other team told the linesman, and the linesman skate over to the empty net, and they're kind of looking at the snow, and they start moving it with their skates. And you've got 2 linesmen, and one of the refs are out there trying to clean the ice, the snow chips away and clear it all out. And then the ref comes over to the bench, and he starts talking. Mark is sitting on the bench and starts talking to Mark, and Mark's got his glove up over his face, and the camera actually caught Mark's face. He's howling. He's laughing so hard. And the 2 teammates on either side of him are laughing. Oh, jeez. And Turk doesn't know what's going on. So he kind of looks over, and he comes in and sticks his head in to hear what the ref is saying. And then Turk starts laughing, and this is a team down a goal, in the last minute and a half of the game, and everybody on the bench is laughing over this. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. But it's like, I don't know. Like, I hate losing, right? It really bothers me. But I don't know. It was like maybe a 2-1 games. The game went pretty well, I think, for me. But we're losing. So usually I never laugh. I'm pretty serious. But I don't know why. But the fact that everybody panics so much, like they got a call, the other team's yelling, the refs are yelling, trying to clean it up. I was just like, because our team was in the other zone the whole time, so I had nothing to do really. So I just like keep putting stone in front of my crease, right? Trying to make it nice. But yeah, so then I don't know. The chaos I created, for a little bit of snowbank up there was, I don't know, made me laugh. No.
Oh, man.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. One other one that I loved, after a game, you and Max Talbot decided that you were going to answer all the questions from the Pittsburgh beat reporters only in French. So they're asking you questions in English, and all of a sudden you're answering them only in French, and Max is sitting next to you as his as your translator. And the question was, the shots on goal in the first period was something like 15-2 or 12-2 against you guys. What were you thinking in your mind? Only getting 2 shots in the period, and you gave a long answer in French, and then Max says something like, "Well, it was only 2 shots, but I made 2 great saves, and those 2 saves were like really game-changing moments, and really, I had one of my best games, and it was me, I." And Max finished, and everybody was quiet, and then Mark goes, "I didn't say that."
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I don't know why we did that, or I don't know.
Because you got to break up the monotony, right?
Yeah, sometimes. Exactly. And Max is awesome with that too. He's always game for anything, right? Always, loves to have a good time. And it is though. I feel like sometimes our interviews are always the same, we always have the same answers and stuff. So it's good to have a little fun with it.
There is sorry, go ahead, Allan. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Adam.
Well, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but there is a picture over Allan's. It's on our left, but it's Allan's right shoulder. Can you see that, Mark?
Not so much. Hold on.
No? Okay. There's a big trophy and a penguin with a hockey stick on the logo. I'm not sure if you can see that one there. But Allan, this is it's hanging in your office. Mark, you mentioned it. It's the it's the one behind you there, the Stanley Cup.
Oh, that one.
The one where you guys are holding it together. Yeah.
I was trying to look on the wall, like the little pictures.
You see? Yeah. Sorry, a little higher.
That's a replica cup signed by Mark from 2009.
And the picture on the other side. What was that moment like for the two of you? You guys had been. Quebec Major Junior Draft, the NHL Draft, the very dramatic signing of your first contract, a couple of tough years at the beginning in Pittsburgh, and obviously, then some heartbreak the season before with the Stanley Cup, and then obviously winning it, Game 7. What was that like for the two of you? Because it feels like it was a journey that you guys were on together.
Yeah. It was amazing. I love that Allan was able to come on the ice at the end there too. When we won, and my mom, dad, sister, wife, and Allan was there. So, like you said, I think we had been through a bunch. Though it was early in my career at that time, and Allan was always at my back, and he's such a fan of the game too, right? He'll do everything for his players and loves hockey and stuff. And I don't know. And to see the happiness in his eyes, once we could celebrate there together and lift the cup together, I think it was amazing. I'm glad we got to share that moment together, and keep it in mind for her.
Yeah, there's I'll tell you, Adam. I was out on the ice. And I'm going towards center ice, and Mark's back was to me, and he was hugging a teammate, and I hit Mark on the back of the jersey, and he turned around, and we jumped into each other's arms, and like my feet were off the ice. I was like holding him with my feet like wrapped around him. And in my entire career working in hockey, that is a moment that is etched in my brain and I will never forget.
Did that party go till 4 a.m. as well? Or?
No, because they were flying back to Pittsburgh.
Right.
So
the road.
They were in Joe Louis, and the party went from the ice to the dressing room, and then after maybe an hour in the dressing room, hour and a half in the dressing room, everybody bugged out to the airport to fly back to Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the party continued there too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that airplane probably was a fun time, wasn't it?
Yeah. Great time. Definitely. Yeah.
And it's funny having done it a few times. Is there a time that stands out, Mark, for you? Like you've got 3 of them, but obviously, is there anything like the first one? Does the second one feel like, this is a little more routine? Or is it always sort of just that I can't believe we got here?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I can answer that properly, but my first one definitely to me is my best one. I don't know because obviously it was the first time I could touch the cup, lift it up, give it a kiss and drink out of it. I think it made me realize how hard it is to get there. Because once the got in the room, everybody laughed. I just sat in my stall and I was gassed. I think the playoffs were long and hard, physically, mentally stressful, right, and all that. And but the feeling at the end when you win, and you've been through all that, and you're the champ. There's nothing like it, right? And so I think that first cup definitely had the special feeling for me. The 2 afterwards. I wasn't playing the last game, to win the cup, so I think it was maybe a little different feeling inside, definitely when you're sitting on the bench and cheering instead of on the ice battling for it.
For the last 6.2 seconds.
The last 6.2 seconds.
Oh, yeah. Geez, at that face. Yeah. That's a little more crazy than to be, but great memory still. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, listen, Mark, you've been incredibly generous with your time and we really appreciate it. I only have one more question for you, and that's to talk about the sword tweet that I put out there in Vegas. Oh, we're out of time. We're out of time.
Steve told me I had to ask that question, Allan.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mark, you're going to have to come on again.
Yes.
Sometime in the future.
Call my agent, we'll set it up.
We can tell the whole story about that. Okay.
Yes, definitely. I might not have the same number, but.